What is often described as the technological revolution is now delivering the government's promise to take service to the people to where they live, from inner cities to South Africa's most rural and remote regions. The many millions of SA's social grant recipients may know very little of the cutting-edge technology that SASSA, the Social Security Agency, is using to spearhead its all-new card-based monthly payment system. And despite the recent groundless High Court tussle over the failed tender bid by ABSA and All Pay, the tender winners, Net1, and their cash Paymaster teams report the final stage of their biometric proof of life and ID verification has been developed, accomplished and delivered on time. The complexity and size of this massive undertaking is outlined by Net1's senior management team.
It's an enormous responsibility to pay 10 million people monthly. Those 10 million people, of course, have families, and ultimately it affects probably more than 20 or even 30 million people in the country on a month-to-month basis. And the responsibility to make sure that they get paid on time every month and the correct amount of money is absolutely enormous.
Beneficiaries living in rural areas don't have to go to towns or to the urban areas. We have trucks that travel to where the beneficiary lives, mostly 5 kilometers from where he lives, and we then pay the beneficiary at these mobile pay points. So when we designed the system, we wanted to ensure that we paid as quickly as possible. So the beneficiary must be in the line from as like 5 seconds or 5 minutes, and he must be gone. The idea is not for the beneficiary to be standing in a queue for hours. Today we pay 10 million social beneficiaries using one single system, and we pay the beneficiaries in 0.3 of a second.
The beauty of Net1's technology is the simplicity with which it works. It's completely transparent to the end user. In other words, they have no real experience or understanding of all the very clever things that happen in the background. And in order to achieve that, you need to invent a technology that can do that.
In terms of the new tender requirements, which SASSA had put out 3 years ago, they required an interoperable system. And in addition to that, they required a system whereby beneficiaries would have to provide proof of life prior to them actually having their monies paid to them. In other words, they wanted to know that I am alive prior to giving me my grant.
Today there are 2 methods that you can identify a beneficiary, which we use on our system. The one is a fingerprint biometric, and the second one is a voice biometric.
We've developed a card in conjunction with MasterCard that allows us to put our biometric system on such card. Therefore, the card is now acceptable in an ATM environment, and it's acceptable utilizing a biometric at a pay point if we so want it to be.
The outflow of the money happens as soon as the beneficiary identifies himself as the correct person. So as soon as we get biometric confirmation that a beneficiary exists, is alive, and is entitled to a grant, the money is physically taken from the treasury account that we hold and is put onto the card of the beneficiary.
Merchant acquiring system is a system that has been devised by Serge Palamant, our CEO, for the purposes of trying to create economic growth. So what would happen is if a client wanted to utilize his PIN, he could make a phone call through voice biometric. We would be able to identify who he is, and his money would then be released into his bank account. Effectively, he could then take that card, he can utilize his PIN, and he could utilize it as anybody else would utilize a debit card. In other words, he could go to a Pick and Pay, he could be to a ShopRite, he could go to an ATM, and he could utilize PIN. What we had done in addition to that is, because certain of our people are illiterate, as you know, they forget their PIN numbers. The PINs get stolen, the money goes missing, they can't remember what it is. What we had done is we said, all right, for the merchants that wanting to participate in it, we would create a biometric terminal. And this biometric terminal will allow the beneficiary not to utilize a PIN, but to utilize his biometric fingerprints to transact.
So, with 120 billion rand flowing in from the Treasury annually, transparency is everything.
The technology really forces a self-balancing of all the funds that we receive and we pay out. And we also do, obviously, a complete reconciliation between the activities that happen within the Net1 environment with the 120 billion rand compared to what SASSA expects us to have done with the 120 billion rand. So during every payment cycle, and really every day, there is an enormous amount of controls built into the system to ensure that from the smallest component of payment, which is to an individual, we reconcile that to the person who actually assisted with the payment, to the people at head office who released that money for the payment, right back to the government to ensure that we use the money for the purpose it was intended for.